Welcome back to Runway Life, everybody. We have Adam Valencic back for the fifth episode at this point.
My second time, third time.
I think it's third time.
Yeah.
So I wanted to get you back because not only are you the owner of First Landings, founder and owner, you know, husband, father, you're also a mechanic with AME mixed in there.
Yeah.
As well as all your flight ratings as well.
Yeah, CFI, all that.
Yep. So I've got to ask, right? Obviously, I know the story. We know the story behind you getting the flight school up and running and how you kind of got your feet wet in the aviation, right?
Right.
How and why did you become a mechanic? Because I kind of feel like there's enough of a separation that I'm like, that's an interesting story.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, right, with aviation, you got your pilots, but you also need your mechanics, right? I mean, they're just as important. So I kind of decided early on that I needed to be working on my own airplanes because that's one of the largest costs of flying, right? If you're going to own an airplane, you've got to have an annual done. You've got to have things fixed. You've got to replace parts. And guess what? You've got to be a licensed FAA mechanic to do all of that on a certified airplane. So might as well, sign up and get all those ratings so that I can take care of the planes myself.
I totally see why you did it now. I mean, the cost savings is just amazing, but you also know your own plane down to the fine nuts and bolts.
Yeah, you find one thing wrong, boom, you can diagnose it there, figure it out, fix it, and I've even had instances where in flight something will happen, and instead of oh my gosh, what is it? Don't know. You can kind of diagnose it, and having all of that knowledge behind you, you can kind of start diagnosing, checking on the symptoms, and figuring out the root cause. Without just wondering and maybe making a call of just, all right, well, I'm going to hit the nearest airport because I don't know.
Well, you're kind of like, I mean, I would love to say I've heard this a lot of different times with pilots that become mechanics. But one of the first times I ever heard of it, other than you, was another YouTuber that's out there, and he went through everything to go and get it done. I think he basically was involved in some sort of cryptocurrency, if I have to read between the lines. So he made, his money, his nut for life, and then said, I'm bored.
Okay.
And went and got like his mechanic, but he also took flight school, and got through everything. Now I know he flies Gulfstreams. All his contract pilot stuff. So pretty cool.
Well, yeah. Unfortunately, I didn't come from the crypto world.
That would have been great, right?
I'd be retired. But I started. I think we touched on it. My uncle's the reason I got into aviation, and he was an A&P IA. So, there's a couple different ways you can become a mechanic certified. One of them is basically on-the-job training.
Right.
So the FAA allows, if you have 30 months full-time experience working under an IA, that you can use that towards the experience you need for your A&P.
And the IA is the inspector authorization, correct? Okay.
Yeah.
Two totally separate licenses, correct?
Wow. So you got your A&P, and then after being an A&P so long, you can get your IA, which allows you to sign off the annuals and 337s, a whole bunch of other stuff.
So all A&Ps can become IAs, but you have to be an A&P to be an IA.
Correct.
Okay.
Right, exactly. So I spent my summers working with my uncle fixing planes. I mean, my first summer up there, I bought a pile of parts for $2,500 that was at one time a Cherokee 140.
Okay.
And I spent the summer rebuilding the engine, rebuilding the airframe, putting it all back together, doing avionics work.
Oh yeah.
Painting work. I mean, you spend 2 weeks sanding an airplane, and then about 3 days actually painting it. You understand that a paint job is all in the prep work.
Oh yeah.
It has nothing to do with actually spraying the paint, because that's easy.
The painting side of it's a couple of hours maybe, but all the prep work is
you spray for 45 minutes and then you walk away and let it dry. No, it's the prep that took 2 weeks ahead of time.
Yeah.
All the sand and finding little dents, scratches, and everything else, and
but if you're not using a respirator, you get to pay for it for the rest of your life too.
That's true too. Yeah, that stuff's real bad.
Oh yeah, it's so Is that basically you went through the path of saying, okay, well, I've been working on all these planes. I've done my 30 months. You said 30, right?
Well, so actually, I'm a little more unique than that. So we talked about Sport Pilot coming out. Well, at the same time they created the Sport Pilot certificate, they also created what's called the Light Sport Repairman.
Okay.
Which there's a couple different ratings. So you can be a light sport repairman with a maintenance rating or inspector rating. So if you get the maintenance rating, ironically, it's the opposite of AMPIA and the IAA, right? If you're a light sport repairman inspection rating, you can inspect your own plane, but you can't do all the other stuff. Whereas the light sport repairman with a maintenance rating is kind of like the IA, but for the light sport world.
Okay.
So all your time as a light sport repairman also counts towards that 30 months.
Okay.
So when you add it up, I probably had about 18 to 20 months working with my uncle rebuilding planes and all that. And then about another 10 or so months that I was a light sport repairman, because when we opened up First Landings, we had light sports. I went out and got the light sport repairman because it's a 3-week course.
Right.
And then all that time, the first year or so, counted towards my AMP rating. And at that point, I kind of put all my records together, got a nice letter, what I did and everything under his supervision.
Right.
And submitted that all to the FAA to get approval to take the test then.
So I'm putting 2 and 2 together for a second, because all of a sudden I'm hearing the light sport helping out in a huge way.
Oh, yeah.
For a good friend of ours that got him to the airlines for substantially less money.
Yep.
And now you could basically also do the same thing with the
Well, we have.
IA side of things.
We have. I've helped
Yeah.
a few techs come through, and it was like, look, we've got light sports to maintain.
Right.
I need mechanics. Go out and get your light sport repairman rating. Work for me for 30 months, and then we'll get you signed off for your AMP. And yeah, I've had guys do that.
That's, it sounds to me that light sport really is the best way to go. Which really I hate that. Cause
That's so late, right?
No, yeah, dang it. It's not made for big boys, that's for dang sure.
No, unfortunately. But it has. It's kind of really opened up the gateway to getting more people in, either pilots or mechanics.
Right.
Unfortunately, I don't think it's penetrated the market as much as the FAA hoped. But, you've got Mosaic coming.
Yep.
And I think that's got a lot that'll change. And hopefully, I don't know what they've done on the maintenance side of things. I really haven't kept track of that. But whether or not, light sport repairmen are going to be able to work on other aircraft, I don't know. But
Well, my basic, and I haven't really gone super deep on Mosaic, but my understanding is, of course, they're going to raise the minimum weight, or the maximum weight, should I say.
Right.
So now it's basically going to bring in, 172s, Cherokees, a few other nice planes that are out there. I mean, even Diamonds and that kind of stuff would basically fall inside of that
Right.
new, revamped light sport side of things. So I think it could be absolutely great.
I think so.
I think it's going to drastically increase the price and the value of anybody that's
Those
got,
legacy aircraft that are going to meet that new rule for sure. They're going to be in high demand.
Yep, through the roof. So
So there is one other route. So
Okay.
we kind of touched on it, right? You can do 30 months experience. You've got the light sport repairman route, but there's universities, right? Or
Right.
there's schools you can go to for A&P training. And instead of the 30 months, it does cut back. It's a full-time school, but it's more like the 18-month curriculum that, you go to school full-time. You're going to learn what you need to know to pass the test. And at the end of it, you have a certificate. The one thing, as we've hired A&Ps and everything, I really do like the guys that have done the on-the-job training.
yeah,
Because they've just got more hands-on,
yeah.
that experience. And when it comes to trying to diagnose something, instead of maybe throwing a part at it, they're willing to diagnose it and figure out, hey, well, maybe it was just a loose wire, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's not a dead battery.
I think that's always, I've seen a lot of different types of schools that are out there in the world, and it always seems to come back to, well, this bright, shiny, perfectly clean engine is not real world, right? You're not going to get
Right.
that
Oh,
when
no.
you get in the field and you actually start working on things. It's not going to be beautiful and clean, and you're going to be definitely working.
Unless you're working on jets.
Yeah.
They're nice and
Well, yeah, those are yeah,
pistons, not so much. They leak.
I think they polish those every time.
Right.
So, but yeah, when you get into the real world, it's like everything else. You're gonna be working in a contaminated environment, right?
Right.
I worked on some track dumpers for a limited time, and let me tell you, when it comes to sealing hydraulics,
Oh yeah.
the tiniest little piece of sand gets into one of those O-rings, and it's like, oh well, never mind, that job just went to crap. So, but yeah, I think that definitely is the case. When I was out there, or when you're out there and you're on your own, you have to figure out, okay, there's a cost-effective way to still replace this or repair it to FAA standards without just replacing an entire harness.
Well, right.
But a lot of people, a lot of guys are used to just saying, oh, I just have to go down to the parts store, they're by parts store, like literally their storage area, and every single one of the parts is there nice and labeled. And
or you head down to the National Aircraft Parts Association.
Yep. Yeah, and there it is. It's there waiting for them. And it's like, yeah, but that's not real world. You're not going to get... Everything's on a budget in business, right?
Right.
And if it needs to be replaced, then it gets replaced. But if it can be fixed, then it needs to be fixed, tested, and put back into...
I promote a lot of our students that ask into getting their A&P, or even working toward it, right? Because it opens up doors for you. Mm-hmm. There's a whole nother career path you can look at, or on any resume, even if you're applying to be a pilot and they see you're an A&P as well.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to give you a leg up, right? So it's great. And when you are doing your cross-country flying and everything, I've had issues come up where you end up at a small, tiny airport because you had to, make a preemptive landing for something going on, and there it is, you're stuck, and if you're waiting on a mechanic to show up and fix it, it might not come, whereas, it's something I've had it as simple as pulling out a plug and cleaning it because it's fouled, right? And then I'm back on my way, but, if you don't have that knowledge and everything, you might be waiting around for somebody to come along and fix it, and on a Saturday or Sunday, if there's nobody there, you might have to leave the plane.
Well, my history with flying, so I'm not going to get into that all the way. But those, the big incident for me was one of those where I'm like, okay, there isn't an airport around.
Yeah.
Somebody that didn't really understand engines might have said, I've got to put it down in the closest area.
Right.
I was very confident that I was going to get it back to Kissimmee and there wasn't going to be any problems. But I've worked on engines since I was like knee-high to a grasshopper, so it's a bit of a different ordeal there.
Right.
But that kind of leads us into an interesting point for two pieces. Okay, so you said, what was it, 24 months for if they go to a normal school? Is that what you said?
It depends on each individual school, but usually it's 18 to 20, 24, something like that.
Right. And then I think I'd seen, is there an accelerated, like everyday type of one that was done?
I think most of those are full-time curriculum.
Okay, right.
Yeah, you're 5 days a week.
Okay. And then the next thing that I wanted to ask about, right, so as a pilot, everybody in this room right now is, we got Derek working the cameras and Caitlin's checking her email. Sorry, Caitlin, I'm just joking. She'll beat me up later. So there are certain things that pilots are allowed to do that fall inside of. Can you name a few of those that are simple ones that a pilot might walk into and see without having their book of regulations sitting with them?
It's right. Part 43, Appendix D.
Right.
And that goes everything from what's required on a 100-hour all the way down to preventative maintenance. Right. And preventative maintenance is what a pilot can perform. If you're a private pilot or higher,
right.
Things like changing a tire, simple screws, electrical work, oil changes, right? Yep. Things like that. Basically anything where you're not opening up like a hydraulic system or any kind of major like airframe repairs or anything like that. Yeah, you can do simple things. And in fact, there's a good one. Before I became an A&P,
right.
So I just become a pilot. A friend and I, a buddy of mine bought an old 1956 172. I think he paid like 12 grand for it or something.
That's straight back, right?
Straight back, straight tail, all that. And I think the paint was from 1956. I mean, the thing looked like it came, it'd been sitting on a ramp somewhere for the last 40 years. And
Bond find.
Right. So I actually had printed out Part 43 and the preventative maintenance section in it. So we were on the ramp at Orlando Executive, and we had the seats taken out. We were doing some touch-up painting, like the seat frames and a few of the interior bits we were cleaning up and everything. And I guess the FAA, a couple FAA inspectors happened to be down the ramp doing a Part 135 inspection, right?
Okay.
I guess when they finished there, they saw this plane, all these parts strewn all over the ramp. They came walking down and introduced themselves, and they kind of asked us, well, what are you guys doing? So we explained, and they're like, well, are you guys even allowed to do that? So I whipped out this sheet of paper, and had all the preventative maintenance. And I go, well, we're doing everything here on this list, and that's it. So the guy looks at it. They look at the plane. They kind of did a walk around, made sure everything looked good, and they said, all right, thanks for your time. We're going to go.
So that's a that's a really important piece for, I would say every pilot should know, right? It's the Part 43 section, really preventative maintenance covers what you might be allowed to replace. Something as simple as a light bulb.
Yeah, right.
I'm sure that if we actually polled a decent amount of pilots, I would bet that there's a good 40% that would say, no, I'm absolutely not allowed to replace
right,
that.
Yeah. We've got a lot of students that don't think you can do anything.
I'm not an MP. I can't replace a light bulb.
Now, whether they can, regulatory under those rules,
and then mentally,
exactly. Do they have the capability? I don't know. I've seen some guys with screwdrivers, and I wouldn't want them near my car, much less airplane.
I'm pretty sure some of those people believe there's a left-handed and a right-handed screwdriver. So I try to leave those guys alone. They might try to top up the blinker fluid.
Yeah.
So one of the things that are inside of that, I carry like a basic kit with me, if you would, which is like screwdriver.
Right.
There's not much you can't fix inside one of the planes, or something that you're allowed to fix by just using a screwdriver.
Right.
So, what I've got to ask this question, just because you've got a boatload of experience, right? What's the worst plane you've ever had to work on?
So worst in what way, right? Hardest to work on?
Biggest pain in the rear.
I've owned a few Moonies.
Okay.
And when you get down to working on anything on the accessory case, especially the lower end of the accessory case, there are a lot of expletives fly when you're trying to get a prop governor out or anything like that, because you've got to remove, a fuel pump, a magneto before you can even get to that. Oh. So and then of course the distance between the accessory case and the firewall is about enough room for the magneto or the governor. So there's no room to articulate it or anything like that. So those can be fun. You learn to work on things without actually seeing it, right?
Yep.
You see with your fingers. Yep. So these, aerospace engineers, when they've designed these planes, they don't think of mechanic when they're designing it, because in fact right now I'm pulling some gear out of a Cherokee, and to get to 4 out of the 8 bolts holding it in, you're twisting your fingers around and everything just to try and find where it's at. Yeah.
I know it's there somewhere. And that's Yoda, right? That's what your longest owned aircraft, is that right?
Yeah, we've had that here since, 2014, I think. About 10 years, yeah. We put, 6,000-7,000 hours on it at that time. Went through 2 engines.
It's time for retirement.
Yeah. That one's being sent out to pasture.
I will miss seeing that plane.
Yeah.
But Adam just had an interesting point to put out there. So if anybody's listening to us on a podcast, as far as Spotify or Apple Podcasts, you might want to check out the YouTube channel so that you can see what will be our new desk.
Yes.
Adam promised it. We're going to hold him to it. Or Derek is. So obviously that's like the worst one. I remember you Mooney. I almost bought that Mooney, right?
Yeah. You were looking at it.
There was a little...
Well, funny, man. You know what happened to that Mooney?
I was just about to say, I knew there was an incident with this, and I want you to tell him.
Gosh, it was only 2-3 weeks ago. The guy... So I sold to a gentleman out of New York.
Right.
And right before he bought it, he wanted an engine analyzer installed. We did that, and then I spent 15 hours or so working with him, training him before he went up there. So in the last, it's been about 2 years, I guess, that he's owned it. Put about 200 hours on the plane. Well, I get a text from him a couple weeks ago, and he's like, "Hey, you remember the Mooney you sold me?" was like, yeah, I do. Yeah, I mean gosh, I had that for 8 or 9 years before then. Flew it all over Bahamas and everything else. So yeah, of course. As well, it's no more. And I said, what? Yeah, it ended up sent me pictures and completely burned. The fuselage is basically burned to the ground. I've never seen anything like that, and I guess fortunately he's okay. Him and he had a passenger with him. They were fine. What happened during their run up, getting ready to depart, they had one of those portable Stratus units or whatever, that ADS-B units that are powered by a lithium polymer portable battery.
The homemade ones?
I don't know if it was homemade or one of those other guys, but he had that in the baggage compartment. And the plane had an airplane cover, canvas airplane cover that I sold with the plane that was back there. Well, I guess the battery decided to go thermal.
Oh, no.
And caught the plane cover on fire in the baggage compartment. At that point, there's nothing to do. They quick jumped out of the plane and proceeded to watch the entire fuselage burn up. It's sad. All that's left is the steel roll cage for the whole top of the fuselage. There's video of the firefighters there and everything putting it out.
And that was a nice plane.
Yeah.
So what we promise is, if you do go to YouTube, we'll make sure that Derek has a couple of pictures to be able to put in there.
Yeah, we can do that.
And it'll be somewhere around here. So he'll go ahead and make sure that gets put in there.
Yeah, but yeah, it's after that, seeing that and thinking, my God, what if he had taken off? What if he was in cruise at 6, 7, 8,000? I mean, I would cruise that plane at 9,500 all day long.
Yep.
Something like that, and he said it was up. I mean, within minutes, that plane was gone. And after, I kind of was like, you know what? I don't think I'm taking a lithium battery on an airplane anymore, because it ain't worth it.
Well, I've seen it a lot with boats.
Yeah.
I mean, both of us own boats, right? And those things, when it catches, it's up and it's out, like you very, very quickly. And a good friend of mine has a big lithium battery in the front of his boat for his trolling motors.
Okay.
Or trolling motor.
Yeah.
And I said to him, like, you got that on a QD? And he's like,
what's that?
No. So I said, yeah, you probably want to get one, because if it does go, if all of a sudden it starts to go, and you've taken it out into the flat, so you've decided you're going to venture a little bit further out,
right?
You might want to be able to disconnect that thing and just throw it straight into the water, because it's safer than it being on your boat at that point.
Yeah, but at least you can get out of the boat. God forbid.
Yeah.
Airplane.
So, the plane.
Not so
I
much.
mean, 9,500 feet. Even the most determined of safety.
I was going to say, when I was doing my steep spirals, maybe you get 2,500 feet a minute.
Yeah,
so you've still got 3-4 minutes.
Yep.
Before you're anywhere where you maybe have an opportunity to land.
And when he says steep spirals, just for anybody that's not,
commercially rated.
Yes. Although I'm pretty sure I practiced one of those private, but I had an instructor that wanted to make sure I knew everything. So it's basically your emergency descent. Something's wrong, and you need to get on the ground as fast as possible.
Right.
But you can't just throw it into a nosedive and get down there. You will lose your wings or other parts. So back to the Mooney for a second.
Yeah.
There's two different types of landing. Is it Johnson bar that's on
those were the manual, right?
Okay.
So the early ones had the manual gear,
right?
Which they like to say there was no backup system,
right?
And the only thing to fail was your arm, right? Now, come to find out, now that they've got 60 something years on them and thousands of hours, we've seen up locks fail and everything like that. So there are parts that do wear out that on any routine inspection should be caught, but it happens.
Yeah.
But no, they're very reliable. In fact, 2 of the planes I had were Johnson bar, and I love it. Their gear's up in seconds.
Yeah.
Whereas when they're on the electric gear, you've got more points of failure, you've got backup systems, and it just takes longer.
Yeah. I just think that whole system. I think the first time it was a YouTube video, and somebody said something about Johnson bar, and I'm like, what the heck's a Johnson bar? So I just had to Google it. I've got to know what that is. So I took a quick look, and I'm like, oh man, that's really cool.
Well, the other
I want one of those planes.
When you get the belly off of a Mooney, right, and you're up there inspecting everything, the guy was a genius. How everything's engineered together, because there's not one cable control system in it, right? Everything is push rods.
Right.
So you can sit under there and watch the ailerons move, all those push rods moving, the landing gear push rods moving, the elevator, rudder, all of it. It's wild. to watch
That's
if you're
pretty-
interested in that kind of thing.
No, that's you know me. I mean, it's mechanical. If it's mechanical and shiny, I'm pretty dang interested in it. So aside from that, that was kind of the biggest pain in the butt to work on, right?
Yeah.
Go for the worst you've had to deal with as far as the most amount of problems.
Oh gosh, most amount of problems. It's I've never had one plane that
Right.
was a whole lot, but you see a lot of routine stuff pop up all the time. Or some of the biggest headaches is pilots,
Yeah.
right? They like to squawk everything, and a lot of times it's something simple, or even learning how to start a plane, right?
Yeah.
Our whole fleet now is fuel injected, so we're coming into summer, so we got those hot starts.
Yep.
And if you know how to do it, it's easy, piece of cake, first blade every time. But when you don't,
Oh yeah.
I've seen them wearing out starters.
I had it was a 182.
Yeah.
That was a total pig to restart out at Leesburg.
Okay.
Stopped for a few minutes. I was basically getting a tour in a few minutes. It turned into like an hour, but it was a really hot day.
Yeah.
And I'd basically taken off out of executive, gone across. I was doing a tour of the tower, which was cool because it was my first time actually
Yeah.
in a tower.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
right?
They're nice over there.
Yeah.
They let everybody tour it. Yeah.
Yep, and I thought it was absolutely amazing, right? Cool. Get downstairs, go out to the plane, go to fire it up, and I'm like, oh my word, I forgot that this is...
Yeah.
Went through the procedure, and it didn't want to start, and I'm like, okay. I ended up leaving it for like another 20 minutes to try to just make sure that I wasn't going to just beat a dead horse, right?
No, I'd say the other biggest thing I've seen kind of in the industry is Rotax.
Right.
So coming from the light sport world, I went to Rotax school, trained on it. All the mechanics I've had that work here at First Landings sent them to Rotax school because we had 4 or 5 light sports. We've got the twin that has 2 Rotaxes in it. But when you get out into the field, and we've had some customers come to us through our Technium Service Center, they don't know how to maintain the Rotax. They don't know how to follow the manual. Honestly, they're used, mechanics, A&Ps are used to dealing with Lycoming, Continental.
Yeah.
These old, big, air-cooled, engines, where now you've got this new, modern engine that's air and water-cooled, right? So you get 2 different systems. You got electronic ignition. You've got dual carburetors. So, and now you've got this beast that, all right, you look at it, and a lot of mechanics go, well, I don't know it. I don't want to know it.
Yeah.
Pass it off. Or, I've had Technium twins roll in here that are at another school or whatever, and they've got to be maintained, but their A&Ps just start throwing stuff at it, trying to fix problems. Rolls in here, and now I need it for the next 3-4 weeks as we dig through everything that was done incorrectly. And I've had carbs that are supposed to be inspected every 200 hours that haven't been touched in the last 1,200.
Yeah.
Gearboxes that need to be done depending on the type of fuel it's run on, how often that needs to be done that aren't done. And that's one of the biggest issues I've seen is just mechanics trying to work on something that they don't know how to work on. And follow the manual. The manual's there, download it, right? And if they just followed that, Rotax is real good with telling you when things need to be done, how to do it, and everything. And they're really great, reliable engines if you follow that schedule.
What are they into now? Like 918s? Is that it?
I think 916. I think.
I've seen
like
those.
135 horse or something. Yeah, they're getting up there.
Like Trent Palmer, I love watching that guy. He's really cool. But he does all backwards flying.
Okay.
And he's got bottom line is, he has some really cool stuff. Built his own hangar next to his house. And all kinds of things. And the plane that he flies has got Rotax, and he swears by Rotax.
Yeah.
Absolutely loves them. So.
Yeah, no, they're great. I've changed more cylinders on a Lycoming and Continental than I can tell you about, and I think in probably 30,000 hours of operating Rotax engines, I've had 1 cylinder I've had to change.
Well, that's pretty solid endorsement for Rotax all alone, right?
Yeah.